Good afternoon. I hope that you can hear me. This is Bruce Bolger from the Enterprise Engagement Alliance, setting up this course 2 for the certification program. And I hope that you folks can hear me because Hi, sorry about this. I'm having a few technical problems again, and I am just getting set up right now. I thought I had everything done perfectly, and I didn't. So please bear with me 1 second, and I will get this going. And again, you have joined the Enterprise Engagement Alliance certification program for the CEP certification. And it covers today, we're going to really focus in on employee engagement. And in addition, we're going to focus I should say, on the implementation process. So I have set up my chat. If anybody has any questions, let me know. I hope you can hear me. And if you can hear me, it might be nice for somebody to put in there that, yes, they can. Otherwise, I'm going to proceed. So thanks very much for joining today. Essentially, what we're going to talk about today is first off, quickly recapping part 1, the principles of enterprise engagement and customer and channel partner engagement, employee engagement today, and then I'm going to get into some of the tactics and implementation of employee engagement. And I cannot see for sure that anybody can hear me. No one has yet chatted, but I'm recording this anyway, so those of you who could not attend, you'll be getting a copy. In the meantime, essentially, the exam and the certification, this certifies that the individual who takes this class understands the principles of enterprise engagement and of Annex ISO 10018 quality. Good afternoon. This is Bruce Bolger from the Enterprise Engagement Alliance. Had a few technical problems here, but we're getting started now. So I'm actually going to go back to the beginning because I see that we had some folks join us. So essentially, what we're going to be covering today is a recap of the first course, and I can send everybody a copy of that course. And in addition, or I should say that class, and then we'll be really diving in today into employee engagement and to the tactics of engagement and how they can be applied to employee engagement in kind of a quick case study. So in terms of the exam and the certification, basically what it certifies is that you have a basic understanding of the principles of enterprise engagement. It does not mean that you're a world expert or that you have tons of experience. It means that you can explain in a glib way to anybody what enterprise engagement is, and you can use these principles to help people design more effective processes to engage people. It will also test your understanding of the basic principles of Annex SL and ISO 10018 quality people management standards, which really are aligned very much with this concept of enterprise engagement. So your preparation for enterprise engagement for this certification is reading a short book that most of you have received, and a couple of you will just be getting in the next couple of days. And these webinars are recorded, and you will have an opportunity to get access to all of them as a member of the EEA. We do make the first one available to everybody as a sample, and you'll be able to use this. And we do give you kind of hints in these webinars as to what we're going to be examining you for. And that examination is a 30-minute online interview with a senior IC advisor who will select from the general questions provided in this primer that I'm going through with you. And we're not trying to trick you. We want to make sure you understand it, that you can explain it to people. There's no desire to trick or fool people. And the web test might go a little bit longer if you're having trouble. And of course, we can repeat it if you don't get the necessary 80% to pass. It's a pass, not pass. And when I get to the summary of principles slides, it's really important that these are the types of things you're going to be questioned on. We really want to make sure that you understand the principles. So first, it's a new discipline that offers significant rewards for the first and early movers. The organizations that realize that having highly engaged customers and employees is a strategic advantage. It's a holistic approach that requires an enterprise-wide look at things. Ideally, you have enterprise-wide integration with the CEO in running it all, but that involves all of the constituents inside and outside that organization. But if not, you can use these same principles to design better incentive programs, better recognition, better loyalty, better training programs, because you'll be thinking about measurement and you'll be thinking about how the different tactics relate and how you need to always look at the audiences that can make a difference. That's the most critical thing. So ideally, it's part of and aligned with the corporate strategy and planning. What's the organization's brand? What does it stand for? What are its values? What are its objectives? And what do I as an individual, how do I contribute to those objectives? It leverages all people's desire to be engaged. It drives higher performance and better business outcomes because people are focused on doing more of the things which, if done more of, will yield the desired result. And the research shows in common sense that you've really got to tap emotions to secure the deep commitment required of employees, customers, partners, suppliers, and others. Connections are emotional. And that's really important for anybody in this business. How can you address the emotional element of it? And that can be with rewards, it can be with communication, it can be with personal discussion, but it always has to be one-to-one. Anything canned is not sincere and it will not achieve desired results. And then it's sustained through measurement and continuous improvement. It's not just something that you throw off, put a new, ping pong table in the lunchroom. It's a strategic plan. So the summary of the first class, again, to reinforce, is that satisfied customers are no more likely to be retained than unsatisfied customers. That's not necessarily the determinant. The research shows that you need to go one step further to really retain people. It's not just enough to satisfy them. You want to wow them. Personal relationships are critical to engaging customers. You might have noticed during the pandemic that some of your banking or other types of vendors might have reached out to you in a personal way. That has never been done before. Funny, but we wait till pandemics to understand the need to connect with people. Engaged customers are more likely to stay and spend more. The important connection between engaged customers and engaged employees is well established. You cannot have a maximal customer experience without either front-facing employees who are engaged or the internal employees who support them. Anybody on this webinar who is in sales knows that your internal customer support team is critical to engaging your customers as well. So engaged employees and customers return on average 3.4 times more than organizations where neither are engaged. You don't necessarily have to remember that 3.4 times, but we want to know that you understand in that exam that you understand this connection. Channel partners are a key constituent for many organizations. They are often a main or even a sole connection to the customers, and they are human beings too, and they have to be engaged just like customers and employees emotionally. To engage channel partners, you must select them carefully, find the ones that are right for you, support them with useful information, and manage the relationship and recognize and reward them. So let's delve now into employee engagement. And a great case study, and you'll find about 5 case studies or 6 in the book that you're going to get, And Best Buy is a great one because it was a struggling retailer and after the Great Recession that everybody thought would be destroyed by Amazon. And yet the CEO, who actually used to be in the incentive business, he was president of Carlson Marketing, which was one of the first incentive companies. And he's based in Minneapolis, which is how he ended up partially at Best Buy. And he took a strategic and systematic approach to restoring the Best Buy brand, and he made incredible progress that's been widely recognized. And he did so by he had a strategic and systematic approach. It was based on clear purpose of enriching customers' lives through technology. They established clear values. They created a code of business ethics, and they focused on engaging their employees on their purpose, on their values, as a key measure of performance and sustainability. And while the company certainly still has problems, they have made enormous gains. Hubert Joly has retired, but his self-selected replacement is following all of the same concept. And when they took over the company, when he took over the company right after the Great Recession, he focused on cutting luxuries and perks, but he didn't cut employees. He instituted a strategic training program to dramatically improve the customer experience and reduce turnover. And he included a strategic and transparent plan that was published to engage all stakeholders in the organizational mission, and he shared that with all stakeholders and shareholders. So there are companies out there that are doing this, and you'll find this in your book. And it's a sad fact that 70% of employees hate their jobs. That's the reality. They might not tell you that, but if they had any choice, they wouldn't want to do it anymore. If they won the lottery, they'd leave. Some of us, like me, I'm lucky. I love my job. I don't want to ever retire. Well, chances are 70% of your employees do not feel that way, and that's okay, but it has a direct impact on performance. According to Gallup, just 38% of US employees really care about their work, and the overall engagement of employees, and there are people that kind of disagree with this kind of definition, and one could squabble about it legitimately, but under 50% of employees in the US are truly engaged in the sense that they are they're raring to go. And this applies just as much to management as it does to employees. Sadly, one of the reasons we have such low engagement is that many of our managers are disengaged. And that's why we hear terms like vapor trail or other empty suits. These are the managers who are disengaged as well. So simply put, engagement is the state of emotional and intellectual commitment to an organization or group. There are lots of people that like to say you can't define engagement. Nonsense. It's fostering the proactive involvement of people in your organizational goals. Saying it can't be defined is an excuse for not dealing with it. And the idea is you want engaged employees who are going to speak positively about the organization to coworkers, potential employees, and customers. They're going to be more likely to stay. They're going to want to be part of that organization. They want to be part of the family, and they're going to strive. They're going to provide extra effort to engage in behaviors that contribute to organizational success. And that's one of the key elements to really take out of this. Most recognition and incentive programs today, besides lacking good measurement processes, do not necessarily align with organizational objectives, and that's critical. So the C-suite, the CEO may be telling shareholders and the C-suite, this is what we've got to do. And many of these incentive and recognition programs just continue to go off and do what they do. And one of the great examples is the concept of length of service recognition awards. We're a true believer that those are completely, shall we say, obsolete, and that the real opportunity today is to focus employees on the behaviors, the actions, and the results that support the organizational goals. And we're going to get into measurement in a later session. But the goal is to focus people on actions that can help the organization. And it's really important to understand the interconnectivity of people. So even if you're designing a recognition program for performance or an incentive or loyalty or training program or social media strategy or whatever it is you're trying to do to engage people, recognize that people are often affected by other people, that there are interconnections. If we want to have great channel engagement, we better support we better engage our internal channel support people to deliver their promises. The channel owner, the distribution partner owner, she or he may have employees that do the selling. We have to make sure we engage them. So one of the big lessons and one of the things that you might likely be tested on is understanding the interconnectivity and the ways that we interact within organizations, and teamwork is basically a means of exponentially growing productivity and quality by putting the smart brains and brawn of people together to get something done. And that it's also important to understand that engagement of employees affects engagement of other people. That the more employees are engaged, the more impact it will have on channel partners and customers. And then employee engagement, and this is something that's so often neglected, can really affect the brand. The talent brand, how that company is seen by its employees, can attract or not attract other employees. And of course, there's now websites like glassdoor.com that employees look at, like it or not. People look at those and they make decisions or perceptions based on them. So it's always important to understand that a brand in the world of enterprise engagement and human capital is a universal brand. It's a brand that applies to everybody. So let's say your overall brand is to uplift people. Well, it's to uplift everybody, customers and employees and whatnot. And this gentleman, Gary Hamel, who's very hyped, right? You see him all over the place. He wrote a book, The Future of Management. He said something that I really think we have to take to heart, because it's frankly what motivated me to pursue this very chimeric path of trying to focus on human capital and business. The misery I had after coming out of college and having, a great job on paper. It was a publishing job. It was what I hoped to do. But it was the horribly stifling organization. And so I've always remembered Gary Hamel's line here: modern organizations are motivationally crippled because they coerce grudging compliance instead of inspiring passionate performance. And ironically, the research, and we touched on this in the first webinar, that people are willing to do awful jobs if they're engaged. They're willing to go to war and fight. They're willing to be policemen, which is a very tough job. Firemen, fire ladies, that's a tough job. Sewage workers, funeral people, whatever. There are a lot of tough jobs that people do passionately when they connect with the concept of why, the purpose. How is this important? How is my job as a janitor keeping things clean so that the warehouse is functioning properly, or that everyone is kept safe from virus or other infections? Great management, great companies make everybody feel part of the team, make every job important. And I remember once years ago, I was a guest on an incentive trip, and I was very pleased to see that one of the people receiving the award at this luxurious resort in Florida was the head of the mail department. And he received an award with his wife, and he was wearing a white tuxedo, and his wife was dressed to the nines. And I actually spoke with them both afterwards, and this was one of the highlights of their life. And this is the gentleman who ran the mailroom, and he was cited by the CEO as having been critical in getting key orders out when they needed to be done. So when you think of that, and you think of the fact that 64% of workers leave their job because they don't feel appreciated, and that most people don't feel that they get very much appreciated, you can see why, that's a very basic reason why people don't stay. And many, young people in a survey, this was done quite a while ago, but I think it's true, would consider leaving their job if they don't have access to sites like YouTube or Facebook from work. So people, want to have a relationship with their jobs. They don't just want to clock in and clock out. So this is a complicated slide, but it's important as we go more into the importance of having a strategic and systematic approach to improving performance. And this is actually a model that was developed in the early 2000s from professors at University of Southern California. And they take a model of how you design any type of engagement strategy. They used the word incentives back then, but in fact, we don't use that word as much anymore because that assumes that it's the incentive that people are working for. All of the research suggests it's not the incentive, it's or if it's the incentive, it's not the reward, it's the entire experience. So the most important thing to do if you want to improve performance is to understand what's going wrong. Do a gap analysis. Why aren't we doing what we're supposed to be doing? We need to know who are the people that we need to get to do this. What is the format? What do they need to know? What information do they need to receive? How do we need to train them? What will motivate them? And what is the time frame that's realistic? And is everything I'm doing appropriate to my culture? That's always important, aligning it with the culture. And then how can I spur task value? If you're a salesperson, you have to make 50 calls a day. That's tough. And how do you make people feel that it's important and that what they're doing is not just to make the big guy or big lady rich, but it's there to make the organization grow? And that's not just the job of the manager. In a big organization, that's the job of the CEO. That's the job of human resources in their communications, in their recognition and reward programs. Again, that recognition program of an incentive trip for the gentleman who ran the mailroom at that company, that fosters task value. That means to him, the company thinks of what I'm doing. You want to look for efficacy. Can people do it? Are they able to do it? And that's why it's just not a matter, an issue of incentives. I've got to be capable of doing it. And it's got to be based on evidence. And then agency, do they buy in? Do they buy into what you're trying to accomplish? And then you've really got to adjust and look at their mood. It's got to feel good. And you know what? When you feel bad, it shows. And then it's got to be a sense of active choice, persistence, mental effort. Am I going to go? How can I keep this going? You can't just do this with a bright, shiny object. It's not just having an employee technical application or a reward program or a training program that's going to do the PIBI model here. It's a process, it's leadership. And then you've got to be monitoring progress. What's the cost benefit analysis? Was it worth it? And then feeding back the information. So this is a very important slide. And those of you who might be in sales and who don't ever design programs, it's understanding these principles that can help your clients design better programs, because chances are 90% of them have never heard of the PIBI model. They've never heard of these processes. And if you understand your own solutions, if you're salespeople on this call, or if you're in HR, if you understand all of the tools at your disposal, the idea is to leverage those tools to achieve these goals in a systematic way, and not just to throw something at the wall and hope it sticks. So assessment is one of the most important starting places. You've got to assess, and that means some type of employee engagement study. There are many, many out there. If you get the advanced certification, you can get more into that. We have a textbook that goes into detail on that and on all the tools of engagement. And we will be touching on all of the tools of engagement in the final session of the CEP program. But you won't be required to have the level of detail that you would in the advanced engagement practitioner program, where you are really being trained for management. And in fact, you have to have 3 years of management experience to accomplish that. So anyway, it's critical to start with a benchmarkable engagement strategy survey that that links. This is what's really important when you're looking at a survey. Does that survey link to business impacts? It doesn't matter whether people are happy. There's lots of research that shows that people who are happy are more likely to stay at your organization, but they are not necessarily more likely to be productive or performing at their best in terms of quality. Happiness, so therefore, this concept of focusing on the experience is terrific. But in your assessments and in your planning, recognize that it's not enough for people to be happy. They've got to be engaged in those things which, if done more of, will yield the desired result. So here's kind of a summary so far before I take you into some more details. You cannot hope to engage employees through superior pay, benefits, and rewards alone. They help, but they are not the end all to be all. You certainly have to pay people enough to live and survive and to have their health care or some way provided for. Otherwise, you will be automatically in a situation where they have their attentions diverted. And maybe your business plan can support that. But people that are worried about their survival will never be able to give your organization their all. They'll be worried first about their survival. Employees must be open to engagement. The psychological term for that is agency. But the organization must put in place the conditions and provide the reasons to sustain that engagement. Lots of people join a company really excited, all charged up, and within weeks, the manager has discouraged them, depressed them by being reactive, ad hoc, petty, personal, power trips, fire drills. All of these things are really about coercing grudging compliance from the workforce. To achieve people's potential, we must inspire passionate performance. And that does mean focusing on all our managers as well. But that's just one part of it. Engaged employees say good things about the organization. They stay longer and they try harder. They willingly offer discretionary effort because they identify with the organization's goals at an emotional level. And again, I don't care what field you're in, you can find people who will be charged up because they'll view your organization like family. Yeah, they'll view your success like their own home. They'll want it to succeed. They'll want the family to succeed, and you'll get more engagement out of them. And recognition of employees and leaders who drive engagement is essential, but it's got to be aligned with the organizational brand, values, culture, and goals, and not just some ad hoc little thing to throw at a problem like absenteeism or safety. And we'll talk more about that. And then engagement must be measured, analyzed, and acted upon. So a simple question might be, employee engagement effectively boils down to rewarding people for the right behaviors. That's about the trickiest question. That's the type of tricky question you'll get. We're going to ask you things that are old adages that aren't true because it's ridiculous. And you all know that. That employee engagement depends upon a lot more than rewards. Those help, but they're only part of the package. So I'm now going to drill into the tactics of enterprise engagement before I take you through kind of a quick case study of how an engagement program can be very easy and measurable. And in a later class, I'll take you into a deeper ROI process. But I'm going to show you that they do not have to be complicated in this program. So first off, the tactics of enterprise engagement. This applies to every discipline. You generally want to have, for the design of that process, a cross-functional team to help get good input. To make sure you're hearing from people at the front lines to identify that gap I showed you in that PIVI model. What is the gap? What do we need to do? What, if done more of, will get us what we want, and how are we going to measure it? Leadership training is critical at all levels, whether it's a strategic effort at your organization, which is ongoing, or even if you're doing a loyalty or an incentive program, or a recognition program with a narrower audience, or it's a CSR, corporate social responsibility, or training, or social media. Whatever you do, whoever is going to be using it, technology, you've got to train people in it. And it's not just training them once and saying adios. It's continual reinforcement, and it's training adjacent to usage. Training when people, communications, when people are on vacation. Obviously you would never launch a training program a week before somebody goes on vacation. Well, similarly, you always want to be providing training and reinforcement right when people are doing something. So of course, if you're launching a new employee app, if you're launching a new surprise and delight program, a new loyalty program, a new learning or safety or attendance, it's an ongoing effort of training of everybody. And if you overlook that, you will get subpar results. And then it's always important to reinforce the brand proposition. If your organization has a brand that's clear, and some don't, but many do, and if the CEO is serious about it, you want to make sure that whatever tactical program you're doing aligns with the strategic. You want to have clear goals, and generally, got to keep it simple. No more than 3, maybe 5 at most. And 2 of those goals might be numeric: increase sales by 5%, increase productivity, increase safety compliance. You can never, by the way, in OSHA rules, you cannot have an incentive program that rewards people for lowering accidents for reasons I'll discuss later on, but they don't want to incent people to underreport. You've got to have polls, surveys, and assessment that are comparable from period to period, and you've got to have a plan to put them into action. I would guess that about 80% of surveys are not effectively put to use. And that's why the whole term employee engagement over the last 10 years has been demeaned, because companies did employee engagement surveys, didn't do anything with them, and then they didn't work. And so, of course, now we have to call it employee experience, because if we change the name, maybe it will make a difference. Communication. Look at everything as a form of communication. It's got to be integrated. It's usually got to be very concise. Print, digital, web, face-to-face, 3-dimensional promotional products can play an important role still. Technology, social networking, learning, engagement portals. I think you're going to be seeing a lot more about enterprise engagement portals, where companies connect digitally with all of their people on a single platform, addressing all the key touch points of communications, learning, rewards, FAQs, social, community, promoting personal meeting and task value, rewards and recognition, tying the goals to the rewards, and even thinking of rewards as an emotional connection. The more they look like cash, the more you may as well use cash. We'll talk more about this, but rewards and recognition are designed to distinguish against cash and cash compensation. They're designed to create an emotional connection, to reinforce key values, to engage the family or significant others, to create that emotional bond. And they should be very clearly distinguished from compensation. And I would say that is one of the most common flaws in incentive recognition and loyalty programs that we see. Community, the whole idea, as I said, of promoting personal meeting and task value and sharing, and then always metrics, measurement, and reporting. So let's go over quickly, and I showed this in the first deck, but again, or in the first class, but it's very important, as you know, in learning to reinforce. And so I'm quickly going to, this is the implementation framework, whether you have a strategic approach and whether you're being called in by your CEO or by a CEO to help with a strategic enterprise engagement approach, or whether you're being called in to redesign a current incentive program, loyalty, recognition, learning, social media, or other communications or event or other type of event, implementation framework always applies. You've always got to have clear goals, objectives, and performance measures, and you need to know who the people are that you've got to engage. So that means engagement surveys, or something called the nominal group technique to gain input from key groups. That you'll be learning about that in an upcoming class. You've got to have some kind of campaign. You don't necessarily have to call it a campaign. It can be a business plan. It can be our strategic plan or our tactical plan, but it has to be in writing, and it doesn't have to be more than 2 pages. In fact, it should not be more than 2 pages, and you should be able to summarize it in the first half page so the CEO doesn't even need to read the whole thing to fully understand it. But it's got your goals, your strategies, your tactics, your measures, the time frame, and what the nature of the objectives are. And you really want to identify the results as well as the behaviors and actions that can contribute to the result. That'll help you determine, by the way, whether the program even worked. Because if your sales went up, but nobody participated in the training program, nobody participated in the communications, nobody used the employee app, well, chances are some external force made your sales go up, and it had nothing to do with the people. So being able to correlate action or results measures with I should say actions or behavior measures is very important. So again, so I don't confuse you, distinguish between results measures, outcome measures, which are usually numeric in some way, dollar or percentages or ratios of gains or declines, and then action or behavior measures, things which if done more of yield the desired result. Like in healthcare, more frequent disinfection would hopefully yield lower infection rates in the various departments. And then communications, critical. And again, I'm repeating myself because, you know, folks, this isn't that complicated. It's pretty easy to understand the framework. It's like Six Sigma. It's easy to explain. It's harder to do because you have to have the expertise to implement communications. You probably want to have an intranet site or engagement portal. That's the focal point for the communications and campaign. You might need a launch kit or a poster or handout to announce the focus. You might need ongoing use of available organization media, meetings or virtual meetings now, emails, promotional products, so that everything that you do integrates with what's always being done. And I can't tell you, another one of the most frequent errors I see in companies is that they segregate, they silo the communications from the learning, from the incentives, so that it's very difficult to have an integrated approach because you need to have learning. Almost any type of campaign requires people to know something they don't now. And collaboration and innovation, people sharing information is exceptionally motivational. It gives young people new to the organization, or maybe older people, an opportunity to share their expertise. And you see a lot of organizations doing mentor programs or job sharing programs, or share different types of sharing learning opportunities, shared learning opportunities, because getting people together, and by the way, diversity programs are fantastic for this, ironically. You know, people really do like to get to know one another. They do like to break down barriers. So when I mean diversity, I don't even mean age, race, or gender. I also mean parts of the organization, getting people from different parts of the organization together. And then, of course, recognition that's strategic and that rewards the actions which you've done more of, yield desired results, and that are tied to metrics. And then again, return on investment and feedback. Again, it's very important in our view to try to assign value to results, behaviors, or actions that are being promoted. Because if you can't assign a value to it, how can you defend, especially in this period of time when everyone is watching their budgets? Even successful companies that are pounding it out right now are being very cautious because they don't know what's going to happen in the next 6 months. So even those of you who might work for a super successful company recognize that CEOs and CFOs are still paranoid as all heck. So it's very important to always have some sort of return on investment feedback. And any of you who sell incentive or recognition or social media learning, communications, or other types of engagement tactics, you really want to be looking at the return on investment and not just feedback. You know, most organizations, well, the people liked the trip, that said our communications was good. They said that the learning was effective, but how did it affect the bottom line? Another trick question might be, for those of you planning to take the test, is what is a critical element for whether a recognition or incentive or any type of engagement program is effective? Well, that it's tied to the organizational objectives and that there's an ROI involved. And then companies today really have to look at technology. I think we're about ready to have a technology revolution. I think technology at most companies reminds me of those photographs of New York City in 1910 with all the electrical and telephone wires strung every which way. I think companies over the years, especially older ones, have evolved lengthy, bulky, difficult processes to communicate that can be easily and inexpensively simplified today. So the key thing here is to connect the teams responsible for engagement. Look at how people interact whenever you design any type of program. Because, for instance, if you set up an engagement strategy whose success depends upon other people than those you are trying to engage, you're likely going to fail, because those employees will feel, I don't have a chance. The salespeople are never going to go out and do that. So if they don't go out and do that, we're never going to achieve our goal, and it'll never happen. So you really have to look at the interconnectivity. So again, keep in mind as you assess engagement that there are different levels of engagement, and that this is an example of one way to set up benchmark data from the Center for Talent Retention. You know, the level, a lot of people are look at that level one. Look at your organization around you. The people that only work do what they have to. Maybe they're somewhat engaged. Yeah, they're selective about where they put their energy, and they'll get charged up for something, but they won't get into anything they don't want to do. Level three, that's where, you know, I'd say about, you know, maybe 30% of employees are, maybe if we're lucky, they're somewhat engaged. Yeah, and they're focused on their deliverables. They're solid. They have a good sense of responsibility. But that fully engaged person, I think in most cases, is no more than 20% at most organizations. And they feel like an owner, they act like an owner. And in fact, in some organizations, this type of behavior is actually disdained and discouraged by coworkers or shop stewards. So it's not easy to create a culture of full engagement. So it's really important to recognize that the managers are extremely important. The managers are the ones that are responsible for these plans, but they really should be tying in their managers and teams. They should be developing action plans in case things go wrong. There should be a talent solution guide to determine any monthly actions. Every single month, we should be looking at what's going on, and we should always be looking at stories. Storytelling is really important, and we can put these into communications. Here's what Jane did to really help out our company brand. Here's what Joe did. Those types of stories, or letting people tell their own stories. And, you know, link feedback and performance. You know, try, you know, to see, this is something that comes from the military, and it actually, it's a tactic that is used in the military. One of our authors worked for the government, has worked or does work for the government, and he shows exactly how, in a sense, in military, they go back over and they see what happened. They see what all the players were. And there's always a formal performance review. What happened? What exactly happened? And we're really no different. Now, this whole issue of rewards, a lot of talk about this. Dan Pink has talked a lot about it. It's really, really important that rewards be used properly, because they rarely are. They should not be a carrot that people strive for. They should be instead a sense of appreciation, of gratitude. They should be highly personal. And if they are being tied to performance, you really have to make sure that they're linked to a higher purpose, or people will cheat. They will. You know, you saw what happened at Wells Fargo and other companies. So it's always important to reward people for the behaviors as well as the actions, and that they should be dangled a little bit, that it's hard, but I can do it. If you're going to do that type of reward program, yes, they can reach, but then you also want to try to, at the same time, build a healthy long-term environment. You don't want to create, you know, an if-then or a competitive situation. You want people to feel that they all have an equal chance, and that they're helping each other, and that they're supporting the values. And then if you are going to be using rewards, that you really have to, that people have to achieve specific goals, like in sales incentives or productivity, quality, or safety, or other types of ideas like that. And there's some companies that are moving away from dangling the carrot and moving towards surprise and delight. We'll be having some upcoming EEA Zoom show about that coming up in August, in August. But it's really, if you're going to do that and there's a contingency, there should be a good rationale. The people should understand why that reward is being offered. Allow people to address that task their own way, and always include praise, always include presentation, personalize, customize, select that brand based on the person, and then don't try to control people. Inspire them by providing useful information that makes them feel that they are being helped. Rewards, when properly used, are actually a form of intrinsic motivation, not extrinsic motivation. Many companies are improperly using them as carrots, and they are missing the point that rewards usually, when they're best used, address emotion and support. And that means tapping emotions, personalizing the rewards, selecting the brands in a careful way for that individual. Like an engineer, no offense to anyone from Black & Decker, you're not going to probably give a Black & Decker to a craftsman or an engineer because they're going to really want a Milwaukee or a Johnson DeWalt. Likewise, someone like me, you can give me a Black & Decker and I won't notice the difference. And rewards should also be used as a communicator, that they're so exciting that they actually create buzz. And remember this old hierarchy of needs. It's really important to know that if people's physiological needs are not being met, if your company has that strategy, that's okay. But just recognize that's where your churn's going to be. That's where your lack of productivity and quality is going to be. And there's a recent book out by a professor of finance at London Business School called Grow the Pie, that basically has found that a better way to make money is to grow the pie, not to view your organization as a fixed pie that you have to divide the proceeds from. And that's why many companies underpay people and overpay others, because they see it as a fixed pie. If you can expand the pie, then there's more for everybody, and you can bring people up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because no matter what job you have, whether it's a janitor, and there are janitors who love their jobs, there are fishermen who love their jobs, they might complain about it, but they're getting a reward from it, they're getting intrinsic satisfaction from it, and that's what we want to always try to tap. And this is where social networking really comes in. And we highly recommend that any type of program that does use rewards always ties in information, learning, recognition in an integrated, aligned way. So your exam question with a W, there's a typo there. So again, this is the kind of trick question you might get. Based on the research, the most effective non-cash rewards are, in order of impact, travel, merchandise, gift cards, and cash. Cash, travel, merchandise, and gift cards. There is no research that confirms overall ranking of rewards. It depends upon the specific situation. Gift cards, travel, and merchandise. Well, number 3 is our correct answer. You will find surveys that from people, from HR people, or from sales managers that will tell you what they want to use, okay? But in terms of being able to tie performance to types of rewards, I would argue that that's probably nonsense, because there are too many other factors as to whether people are actually succeeding. But if people can remember what they did, if they are reinforcing their behaviors, and I'm going to show you this in a very quick, wonderful case study of a campaign for a casino that was starting up, how simple an engagement program can work and be measurable. So wrapping up on our webinar, I'm going to take you through this very quickly. The name of this campaign was See, Say, Smile. The objective they had determined at this particular casino, that it was the interaction between employees and guests that was a real factor in retention and getting people to come back. It wasn't just winning, because as you know, if you gamble long enough, you will not win, as any casino owner will tell you. So what would get people to come back? They found that it was all about the way the gamers felt treated by the actual employees. So they came up with a campaign to focus on the guest experience and to make it memorable through a big emphasis on courtesy. And what they did was they wanted to have an ongoing training program that would energize and inform people all throughout the casino on how they could affect the feelings of the customers. And it was all through ongoing training that was done with videos. And so what they did was they defined the guest experience with 3 words: see, say, smile. And they developed a whole engagement program and series of training videos around it. And so they communicated the need to see, make eye contact with that customer, say, offer a warm and friendly greeting, smile as if as if you wish that customer well. And they had, of course, mystery shoppers to verify all of this. They needed to have communications. So they had a whole program of rewards and recognition and videos, and they rewarded people based on mystery shopper visits. And they were able to measure the results because they had the mystery shopper come in 8 times per month, and they scored on whether all parts of the See, Say, Smile campaign were being properly demonstrated. And then they compared it with the financial results, and they saw a direct correlation between the casino property results and the compliance rate. So the whole idea is measure results. Don't just do a campaign. And you can see how simple it is. It's really quite simple. Doesn't have to be complicated in any way. So kind of just coming up with the final thoughts. And if you have any questions, you can type them in on the chat. I am using the chat for questions. So it's very important to understand that the fundamental theory behind all of this is that this is all about getting better business outcomes. Engagement is not about creating better experiences, it's about creating better outcomes. Most organizations focused on employee engagement have room for improvement. Very few extend their efforts beyond employees and customers, and very few look at their programs with the type of measurement and discipline that I'm showing you. And it's not harder to do it this way. It's actually easier to do it this way, but companies have never been trained on it. It's not taught anywhere, and they don't know any better. It's important to assess engagement early and often. It's important to create a sense of ownership throughout the team in the program. Can't just be the manager. It's got to be all the managers. It's got to be the employees. When you get assessment data, act on it. One of the biggest mistakes in businesses is that they do employee engagement surveys and they don't do anything with the data. Regularly measure your improvements or your problems and get feedback continually from employees to profit from the power of engagement. So folks, that concludes this webinar. I thank you very much for those of you who've attended it live. Those of you who have the recorded version, we will be continually improving these and replacing these as we get them better. But for now, you can be sure you have everything you need to pass the test for the Certified Engagement Practitioner. And if not, you feel free to contact me at every time. Thanks again for attending. Have a great day and a great week.